Hello YouTube and welcome back to our channel. Now this is the part 2 of a mini-series of repairing your frame rails. Now what you're looking at here is the first layer. You're going to want to cut through. You can use the edge right there on the oval part right here I'm tapping to make your first incision cuts with the Sawzall. It will allow you to see how far your rust will go and if you only need to repair this one section or the other mini layers in behind it. Right now I'm trying to peel back the metal with just one hand because my GoPro died and I'm trying to use my camera on my phone to record it and still peel this off as one piece, so I left a little piece of metal on the edge, which is what's fighting me so hard to pull it off. So use your channel locks or vice grips like I'm using my vice grips, and that'll help me twist it off, and you can see how deep the rust went like I was saying. And to avoid really bending the metal a lot, I don't really tighten my vice grips down very tightly. That's why they kind of slide around on it, and that allow me to keep the true shape of what I'm trying to do. And as you can see, my other layers were rotted out behind it, so I'm going to have to do a little bit more in-depth metal surgery on this. Alright, my camera died a little bit in between here, but as you can see, I am still slowly peeling it back and chiseling away with the Sawzall and getting back to clean metal. Again, if the footage is a little shaky, I'm sorry ahead of time because I'm trying to film with my one hand and use my pry bar in the other while my GoPro is dead and the batteries are charging. Now, the foam in there is actually factory, and if you go in the forums, you'll see that it comes on every package except for the Demon. Now, the current model I'm underneath right now is a 2006 Dodge Charger Pursuit package with a 5.7 liter. I'm cutting away and making sure I can prep these frame rails. As you can see, I'm using the Sawzall. It is fighting me. I'm trying to get around these cables, and I'm not going to fast forward past it. And as you can see, I am cutting away, trying to get this cleaned up for the new patches to go in. Now, the reason I'm not using a cutoff wheel or anything else like that is because I can get a really good clean cut with the Sawzall as long as it's not fighting me. And as you can see right now, I got a pretty good clean edge going on until it kicks back just like that. And then it keeps fighting me a little bit. But clean up the metal and keep tracing away. Take your time and cut away at least until you can see some clean metal. Now, you don't have to worry about it being a uniform cut right at this moment. You're going to clean up your cuts even after you're done doing the rust repair and everything else like that, with removing any surface rust before you weld on the new metal. Right now, you're just going to be trying to cut away everywhere that is completely rotten and can't be saved, ground down, or converted, as you pretty much want to make sure this place is as clean as you can get it, because this is a very high crucial moment area where you're going to make sure that you have the reinforcement that you need, and there's multiple layers that have to be rebuilt, so you're going to have to take your time cutting away all of the cancer, aka the rust, to make sure that you can pretty much get on new metal without stuff happening in the future. Now, I do recommend taking off the outer rocker panel that's made out of plastic. It's pretty much an accent panel for these 2006 Dodge Chargers and Magnums and 300 series cars. I'm pretty much holding it back. As you can see, I am trying to get the cutoff wheel started, but my battery's a little dead on this one right now, and I was pretty much refusing to get up. But I'm just going to clean up the edge a little bit, cut a little bit further so that I can pretty much pull this panel off in this section. But right now, I like to use the Sawzall like I was saying before because this cutoff wheel, it doesn't really get in the best of areas and it's not really the most powerful. I do have an actual Milwaukee plug-in 110 with a 5-inch cutoff. But right now, like I said, I need to be contained with this and try to get in the areas that I need to without worrying too much kickback or digging in too deep, which the Sawzall pretty much bounces instead of cutting in too deep, and then you're stuck with something that is not what you want to be left with. Now, I'm pretty much playing around with this, trying to show you what I was doing. You can use your flathead. I didn't have a hammer on me at the time to use the flathead as more of a chisel, so I pretty much was just prying it back and forth and trying to get my Sawzall in there to get the last little bit of spot welds and remove the last little bit of rusted metal that's attached to the outer rocker panel skin. Like I said, I'm not trying to fast forward through too much of this. I want you to see the raw footage of how it is to remove this rust, and it's not as glorified or fast forward as most people show you. It does take some time to cut away at it without removing it fully in sections of full panels. Right now, I'm still experimenting to see how far things went. I always like the wiggle technique like this, wiggle back and forth, and it pretty much will pop off eventually. But this one was being a little extra stubborn, and I just, gave it a little extra love, wiggling it back and forth. And as you can feel the metal getting thinner and thinner every time you move it back and forth, that's when you pretty much know once you're done with that final pull, just like that, that's when it's gonna show you what's behind it. And this is another reason, the overlap metal that causes it to rust out, like I showed in the part one, where the rust mud, debris, and everything else, with the water and condensation gets trapped on top of the area where the foam is, and this will cause the rust to form. And just like you know anything about rust, it spreads and slowly takes over the panel, even if it wasn't compromised before. So if you can cut out and remove it all, that's your best bet at removing it from your car. Now, if you're repairing this area, you will pretty much see that there's probably about 4 layers that will have to be patched and repaired after we grind off and pretty much treat any metal that has to be converted. And then we will use a yellow rust preventative and rust sealing spray, which can be top coated any color you want after that. It'll seal away anything and convert it to, and I'm going to use a gel on top of that after grinding everything to convert the surface, which will be a double conversion to make sure I will be ready for my patches. Alright, thanks again for following through and continuing to watch this. Remember to like and subscribe if you like this type of stuff and like to see vehicles be restored. I have a 1965 Wagoneer that I am restoring at this moment, which will be up for sale eventually once it's done. You can check out my previous videos to see what it's all about. It's a really interesting ride. This vehicle is my personal one, so right now I'm still just trying to get it ready and get it back on the road. I daily drive it alongside another vehicle, which allows me to repair either one when there's a problem just like this, and I don't have to worry about being stranded with no ride. I was doing some research on these 2006 to 2009 Dodge Chargers, 300, and Magnums, and I was finding out a lot of people who actually drive these vehicles in the Northeast area who have to deal with salt and corrosion, usually more than most states, have to have this area usually fabricated and or repaired eventually. And I didn't see anyone uploading a video, and I thought, let me upload this real time, unedited, and show you guys how I'm working and without the fancy editing and stuff like that. Usually I would be able to cut this metal in a more clean fashion, but with it being so many layers, I was really trying to take my time. And despite the jagged edges, we will be cleaning those up eventually with a Dremel and be tracing out our new patches, which then will cut and clean everything up, and then that will allow us to patch it correctly. And as you can see right here, I'm going to show you, this is pretty much the main reason that these Dodge Chargers rot out I was reading that the only trim package that is exempt from this was the Dodge Demon to reduce on the weight. Now, I didn't come up with that fact. I can't fact check it myself correctly, but I was reading in the forums. Anyone else can write in the comments below if I read that incorrectly, or if the person who was telling me that they worked in the Dodge dealerships and they pretty much spray this in there for rigidity and other concerns, pretty much like how they do in pillars and stuff like that. You can go to Sherwin-Williams and actually buy a pillar foam that's a two-part and mixes and sprays out so that you can actually fill those areas up again. For me, I don't really like foam as it is something that's going to trap water, condensation, salt, debris, mud, anything that comes up on the surface of the metal, and it's not really going to let it breathe. Professionally, in my opinion, I would rather see thicker metal there. You can keep the ribbing. As you can see, I'm going to be pulling out all this foam. I'm not going to keep it. And I'm going to do my best to get in there deeper all the way down the whole length of the car and remove it before I patch it too. Which I'm going to try and upload a separate video about that and see if there's a way I can remove all of it. And if you're interested in pulling out the foam in your car too, if you had it, just follow through with what I had to deal with and that will help pull it out. Alright, as you can see, I am taking my bar right here and trying to get in there and loosening it up, scraping it away, and causing it to fall down. It's crazy how this forbidden popcorn is the reason why all this rot is pretty much starting, along with the other reason I was talking about. You should see how thick it is inside of the whole railing. It's going to take so long to get it out, and this is some of the stuff that was just on the floor, and I've already thrown out a lot of it. Alright, in this point in the video, I don't want to edit out anything in it, so I'm going to pretty much fast forward it in the speed, and this way you could still get the footage and see what has to happen, and how I'm trimming away at this rust. Now I'm really using some cheap blades, so I don't really mind how mangled and beat up they get, and they're pretty much going to bounce when you're going to hit something that you're not supposed to cut through. Unlike a cutoff wheel, like I was saying, which will just keep on going. Although you will think that you're cutting through what you need, you'll be cutting through double of the layer. And at this point, I wanted to pretty much be able to bounce off and know that I was safe hitting what was behind it versus going through it and compromising something else. Now, if you're ever too scared to use your hand or anything like that, you can use a pair of pliers. I'm just pretty much too comfortable with metal at this point, and I know where to push and not to push with my fingers so I don't get cut, even with gloves or gloves off. So do not do what I'm doing at home. Do not put yourself in harm's way and try to use pliers when you need to grab anything that is sharp. Your hands do and will get cut. Here's my new pile of foam that I was working with and just showing you more of it. Alright, at this point I'm pretty much done trimming and I will make sure that my lines are more correct once I am done sanding down and removing all the rust and then prepping it with some rust converting gel and then spraying the yellow rust converter paint, which I was talking about, which could be top coated. This is one of the wheels that I like to use to help prep and remove any of the scaling and rust and allow you to see that there is still clean metal behind it. Although I was already done checking that, I just wanted to show you guys that this is what I'm trying to remove so that I can have a clean area to put my patches on and repair it with some new panels. I do have some better tools to use, like belt sanders and flap discs and stuff like that. But this is something that you can do at home with a drill. Any kind of drill will work, a 12 volt, 18 volt, something that goes into the wall, 110. All you need is something that will spin at a certain RPM, and you can put this attachment on it. Go to Harbor Freight and you can buy one for about $4, and that will save you on some of the more expensive power tools or air tools that you can use to help clean this up. Also, if you do have a sandblaster, it is 10 times easier just to use the sandblaster in this area. I'm going to use a combo of a few different tools, including a needle scaler. The one problem with this attachment is it doesn't give you much room or clearance to pretty much get in the areas that you need. So I just pretty much wanted to show you guys still how to use it. And this drill I have is pretty much getting on its end of its life. So the chuck pretty much has some problems. I'm just using it till it pretty much gives up on me and I can use the newer one. But that's why this attachment's not staying in its place. I have to pretty much try to wrestle it to stay still, but I am determined to keep using it until it pretty much quits. As you can see, it's pretty much shiny metal right behind there with a little bit of oxidation and pitting that I'm going to get in there with the chisel and use the converter with the gel, allow that to sink into the pits and stuff like that, do its conversion, and then the special paint I'll be using will be sealing it in and making sure that when I do the patches it will be fine. Like I said, there's easier tools, but like I was trying to do here was show you guys for the average homeowner or someone who's just starting to get into it and budget friendly way to remove and descale the area with this wheel and prep it for the next step. Alright, at this point you're going to want to start doing the same thing that you're doing on the outside, removing all of the loose rust and trying to get down to bare metal all the way where you need to and clean up any of the surface rust like this on the inner frame rail. Now I'm using the smaller wheel to get in there. It doesn't sand as well because it's almost on its way out and pretty much done, but it allows you to get in that area without hitting the surface like the water disc does. Now at this point, I'm going to be getting the needle scaler out, and this will allow me to help myself get into the areas that the other attachment cannot. Right now, I'm trying to show you guys how to do it with the minimal amount of tools to keep your budget at the minimum amount. Now I have other tools I could use to help make this process go a little smoother and faster, but these are two tools that you can pretty much pick up and get things done at such a reasonable price. Now just take your time, allow the air pressure to keep building up if you have a smaller tank, and just take it in sections and start pulling off all the areas that you think will need this type of descaling and remove anything in the pitting area. Then you can go through and wire wheel it or hit it with your gel or anything else like that, which is the next step. Now I did fast forward this and try to keep in almost every section that I could to make sure you guys could see in real time how long this will really take you. And it took a couple of hours to get it to this point, even before I started to cut away and make this short clip, which in retrospect is not that short, but for rust repair, a 30-minute video is really short for how much work goes into repairing this and hours to make sure that you are doing it correctly and to the best degree that you can with the tools that you have. And like I'm saying, this is how you could do it with the cheapest and with two tools to keep it in your budget zone. I do have other tools, like I keep repeating, that help make it easier, but this will help keep you contained and starting at a very reasonable and beginner level. Now at this point, my air compressor isn't that big either, like I was hinting for other people who have smaller air compressors. I'm doing with about 30 gallon with about 2.5 horsepower motor, which helps me do painting and everything else like that. But with this needle scaler on a constant pressure and pushing at about 120 psi and making sure that I can really pound this metal and get everything clean, it runs out of pressure relatively pretty fast. So taking breaks and stuff like that really allows me to get in the areas that I need with the more pressure once the tank builds up again. If you've been following along, you do know that I am in just a 2-bed garage right now and trying to save up for a shop. And remember to like and subscribe if you'd like to see classic cars or cars like this getting saved. Alright, once you're satisfied with your results, you're going to go to the next step, which is a rust dissolver. You can use Loctite or you can use Rust-Oleum rust dissolver, which I am just using at this point because I had it on hand and I didn't feel like running out and buying more Loctite naval jelly, which I prefer. Okay, so basically right now you're going to take your naval jelly or rust preserver or rust dissolver, whatever the brand calls it, and rub it all over your metal. Take a nice little brush, take your time, lather it up, use as much as you want to, and give it about 15 to 30 minutes, if not a little longer, depending on how much surface rust or anything that's in the pitting that you have left. That will allow you to convert everything and make sure that it's sealed away, and then when you spray on your paint, you don't have to worry about it growing or anything like that. Alright, so I stopped for dinner, and as you can see here, the rust gel actually ate away and converted stuff to like a white finish, as you can see, and everywhere else kind of blackened it. And if you want, you could do a second coating, if not a little bit more, to make sure that you are completely satisfied. But I am also using a rust sealing paint, and it's yellow. You could pretty much put a nice barrier between you and the metal that you prepped, and then you can spray over a primer over the top of it or do a top coat, which I'm most likely going to just top coat with some black sealer paint, gloss, or single stage flat, depending on what I want to do. Fade it into the rest of the floor pan. But as you can see here, I'm just getting my rag in there and wiping it off to get any of that gel residue that may be left that didn't oxidize or stay around, and you'll be ready to spray. Now again, remember to like and subscribe if you liked this video or like to see any more rust repair that you like to tackle up on your own rides. And if you need any tips, follow this channel. Now this stuff is very, very thin and shows very transparent, doesn't top coat or hide very well. So basically you're going to want to put on multiple layers. This will also show you anywhere else that you want to cut or remove before you put on your patch panels, because you'll see what's in the way or what's not going to help you have a flush finish. Now, I'm not worried about little fuzzies or anything like that because this is on the undercarriage, but if you were doing a pristine outside paint job, this is not what I would be doing. I'd be masking off the edges, but I'm not worried about overspray on the existing edges of those other panels, as I'm most likely going to be refinishing the underneath of this car with a flat black or semi-gloss or full gloss, depending on what I choose to match the rest of the floor pan that's already in the rest of the car. This paint is just here to help reform and inhibit anything else and cut off the oxygen to any of the pitting or rust that was left in this area. As I was already using that jelly to convert, this is pretty much my last preventative barrier. And then I'll trim up the metal. I know the edges of the metal are a little uneven right now, but that's not important right now because once you make your patches, that's when you'll clean everything up and get everything ready. Right now, I'm just making sure everything is prepped and ready to go to trace out and cut my new metal out of. I'm using 16 gauge, and for certain of the panels, I'm going 18 gauge. I do know that this steel is 20 gauge. I'm going a little bit thicker to give myself some extra rigidity and have some more strength to this area and help resist corrosion over time. I do know on the bottom right there by the rocker panel there is still some of the metal butt spliced together. I will be cutting and removing that, but for right now I'm just spraying and prepping the area to make sure that I can show for intensive purposes and also keep moving forward with my build, but allow you to see what is going on. And like that's what I was saying, you'll be able to know what you want to patch and cut and trim and still make cleaner before you put on those patch panels will be part of the part 3 video, which I'll show you how I'm cleaning up that area even more after this. Now stay tuned and I'll be finishing up these frame rails and cleaning it up and showing you how to fabricate the last little bit of this and getting it all banged out. Until tomorrow, guys, stay tuned and remember to subscribe.